What is up? Good mic work. Back at ya. Hell in the Cell 2016 is in the books, and that was a very, very interesting show, to say the least. My initial reaction is I actually liked it. I wasn't expecting a whole hell of a lot out of this pay-per-view, and it gave me a little bit more than I expected, and I was pleasantly surprised with a lot of it. So, my initial reaction, the show just ended for me, and I'm recording my thoughts right away. Hopefully I'll have this up to YouTube for you in a couple of hours. But initially, I can't really complain too bad about this pay-per-view. There's definitely a few things I can complain about, but really overall, this show to me delivered more than I was expecting it to, and that's a victory in my book. So the big news was, rumors were circulating throughout the day that the women could actually main event this thing, and a lot of fans were speculating on this in weeks prior, and I actually never even brought this up in my last commentary or my Hell in the Cell predictions, which match I thought would be the main event. I knew it was possible that the girls could possibly main event, but I still didn't really see it happening, so it wasn't until the pay-per-view started that we realized it was actually going to happen. I couldn't be happier or prouder of Sasha and Charlotte. I thought it was awesome that they were getting this opportunity. So let's start with the main event of the show. They had to follow two pretty decent Hell in the Cell matches, which we'll get into later, and I liked the beginning of it because they were treating it like a big-time WrestleMania match. I loved their entrances. Charlotte came out Macho King style on top of the platform with the throne and the people carrying her to the ring. And Sasha came out Eddie Guerrero or JBL or Alberto Del Rio style with the car, and I just loved the whole setup of it. And they waited to lower the cage down until they got in the ring. They both stood side by side, and they were really going to make this a big deal. And I was kind of liking that, but at the same time, I was like, if these girls hate each other so much, they should start fighting right now. And then, much to my delight, Charlotte gets the early advantage and nails Sasha as they're lowering the cage and making this big production of the whole thing. She gets an early jump on her. The cage hasn't even been completely lowered, and she starts kicking the hell out of Sasha, throws her on the outside of the ring, eventually gives her a power bomb through the announce table, which Sasha just took a sick bump on that. And then she sold the shit out of it. They brought out the stretcher. They were going to do the whole thing. So this was kind of my idea in my predictions, only instead of having blood like I suggested, WWE did the whole table stretcher spot. I just thought that Sasha should be, brutally beaten up in one way or the other because Charlotte is bigger, she's stronger, maybe more suited for a cage match than Sasha is. So I thought that Sasha should do the majority of the selling in this match. And I thought if she got a little color, that would be great and another first for the women's division. But they went this route instead, and I liked it. They didn't go too over the top. They came close. Because you knew what was going to happen. The match wasn't going to end like that. This is the main event. We're 2 minutes in, and Sasha's being carried out. That's not going to end the show. So you know she's going to get off of that stretcher Mick Foley style. And as soon as the ring announcer started announcing Charlotte as the winner, Sasha jumped off the stretcher, dove in the cage, and proceeded to start attacking Charlotte. And then they started brawling some more and went on to have a hell of a little Hell in the Cell match, I gotta say. They had one hiccup. There was that really bad spot with the table. Looked like Charlotte, I think, was setting it up on the outside of the ring to maybe suplex Sasha into it, or maybe Sasha was going to reverse and shove Charlotte through the table. Or maybe she was going to lay Charlotte on the table and then dive through her and hit her with an elbow or something like that. Whatever happened, the whole thing was completely botched and looked like shit. But they did recover nicely from that. I got a little worried there for a minute because the fans were booing. People were talking about it on Twitter. And I was like, don't let that ruin what so far is a pretty extraordinary match between these two girls. I would hate to have this one little tiny botch. The men botch an awful lot too. And sometimes, they can easily recover and make the match fantastic, and I thought those girls were doing enough good things in the match to where they could afford one botch, and they did recover nicely in the end. We never really got a very good table spot except for the finish when Charlotte just kind of props up the table in the corner and then just throws Sasha viciously into it 2 times and then nails her with one of her finishers and gets the pin and defeats Sasha Banks, which was a huge surprise. After the match that they had, Sasha is fighting for her life. She's got so much sympathy. She's a hugely over babyface. She's the champion who just won the belt a short time ago, and she's in her hometown. I really thought that she was going to retain the title. Now, I said in my predictions that of the 3 Hell in the Cell matches, 1 belt had to change hands. And the 2 previous matches, the champions retained. So I wasn't totally surprised that Charlotte won the belt. I came close to predicting her in my predictions, actually, but decided to go with Sasha after all. So the ending definitely surprised me, and I will say I think it surprised Twitter too, because Twitter blew up. I hated to walk away from my computer to go record this, but people were going off. People were pretty mad about this as well, which surprised me. I mean, I was just as surprised as everybody was. I really didn't see that coming. I don't know what it is about Charlotte and Sasha. Charlotte is a badass, unstoppable beast on pay-per-view, and Sasha seems like she's a Raw girl. I mean, Charlotte is something like 13-0 in pay-per-view matches or something like that, and Sasha, she's won the belt twice and won them both on Raw. So whenever Charlotte has an off night, it seems to be on TV, not on pay-per-view. And to the people that say it doesn't make sense, I'll agree with you in the sense that I was surprised and I thought Sasha would retain. As far as it not making sense, though, like I said earlier, Charlotte is bigger, she's stronger, she was a very, very dominant women's champion, and she might be a little bit better suited for a cage match than Sasha. So what doesn't make sense about it? What doesn't make sense about two girls having a brutal fight, Charlotte even cheating and getting the upper hand on Sasha to begin with to gain an advantage, and then winds up winning? What about that doesn't make sense? To me, it makes perfect sense. But I think what people are saying is that the outcome, the winner, people thought that Sasha is over as she is. People like seeing her as the women's champion. Charlotte already had a long run with that belt. It feels like it should be somebody else's turn. So I think fans wanted to see that continue, which I completely understand. But I think sometimes people get a little bit lost in who they want to see win, and they start convincing themselves that it doesn't make sense, when really the match made sense just fine. It really just didn't please us who got the 3 count in the end. So I was definitely surprised and definitely felt bad for Sasha. It seems like every time she's won that belt, she's had it for just a couple of weeks, and then she's dropped it back to Charlotte. So I would have liked to see Sasha's reign continue just as much as anybody out there would. So it's really not an issue of defending. I don't think there's really anything to defend here. I think these women went out there and had a great match. They made history. They entertained the shit out of me, and they did a more than respectable job of following the men, especially Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens, who had an awesome Hell in a Cell match themselves. And those girls, they carried their own weight, and they represented the main event well, and they deserve to get another chance to main event because they delivered tonight. I know the outcome wasn't really what we all wanted, but the match itself, the story they told, the job they did in there in the cage, I think the girls held their own. So bravo and congrats to both Sasha and Charlotte for performing in one hell of a main event match on a pay-per-view, and it was awesome to see. Moving on to the rest of the card now, the Universal title, of course, was on the line. Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins facing each other in a Hell in the Cell, and this was an awesome Hell in the Cell match. They had some great stuff in this one. Kevin Owens then gets his hands on a fire extinguisher, and he accidentally blasts the referee in the face, which means they have to kind of rescue the referee and get him out of there. They open the door to get him out. That allows Jericho to run down, jump in the cage, and lock the door behind him. So now essentially it's a 2-on-1 handicap match. Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens against Seth Rollins. Seth had already taken a ton of punishment in this match as it was. There had already been several near falls, and now Jericho is in there helping out Kevin Owens. Every time Seth Rollins starts fighting back and gets the upper hand, Jericho is right there to cut him off. After fighting and surviving for so long, Seth Rollins does eventually succumb to Kevin Owens. He gives him a powerbomb over 2 chairs and gets the pin and retains the title, which I did not predict that he would. I predicted Seth Rollins. I thought maybe they would give Seth Rollins a short run with the belt and have him drop it back to Kevin Owens next month or something like that. But nope, Kevin Owens keeps the belt a little bit longer. I have absolutely no problem with that. I would have been happy regardless of who won this match. I really didn't care. And I really thought that if Owens dropped it, it would be because Chris Jericho tried to help him out and fucked up. And Jericho was so over. That hilarious segment he had backstage with Stephanie and Mick earlier on in the pay-per-view. Did you see that? I mean, I'm wondering, since Jericho has been around for a while now, he usually just comes in and out in between Fozzy tours and a couple of months at a time, but it seems like this latest run has lasted a while. So part of me is wondering that if maybe they put the strap on him. That fucking scarf, that fucking list, I can't get enough of it. So Chris Jericho is my man. I love everything he does. And I really thought he was going to wind up screwing over Kevin Owens, which might lead to a feud between the two or something like that. But the end of the match also saw Chris Jericho attacking Seth Rollins and hitting him with a code breaker after Seth Rollins was completely dead in the ring. I guess we'll know a lot more tomorrow night after what will probably be a pretty ridiculous Halloween Raw. The third and final Hell in a Cell match that we have to talk about actually opened the show. Roman Reigns versus Rusev. This match was exactly 1,000,000% what I expected. They gave me everything I thought. It was a pretty good match. It actually maybe was a little bit better than I expected, just a little bit. I didn't like the finish, though, because Roman Reigns took an ass-kicking. Even the accolade with the chain wrapped around the face on the steps, that whole thing, he was surviving. I felt like, normally I don't complain about Roman Reigns kicking out of shit and no selling or anything like that. Normally I don't care. I think fans are way overboard with that type of thing. But in this match, it really truly seemed like Roman Reigns survived a hell of a lot more punishment than Rusev did. After all that shit that Rusev did to him, what wound up doing Rusev in was a spear off the steps that just added another foot, to his bump. That's nothing compared to what Rusev was doing to Roman Reigns that he was kicking out of. The match was okay, definitely better than I expected, but really at the end of the day, that's exactly what I expected. It was almost exactly like the match Roman Reigns had last year with Bray Wyatt. Same type of match, same type of feud, same type of outcome. We did have another title change on the show as well. The Cruiserweight belt did change hands. I predicted this. I thought that Brian Kendrick could grab the belt here some way. It was really weak the way they were doing it. The way the storyline is being built up, Brian Kendrick is actually asking TJ Perkins to let him win. So fucking lame. I don't like that at all. Brian Kendrick is the aging veteran. He feels like he's not going to get another chance. Him and TJ are friends. They go way back. They have a ton of history. So Brian Kendrick is like, hey, do me a solid here and let me win this belt. But that's stupid, and I didn't know how that was going to hold up, and certainly TJ wasn't going to go out there and lay down for him because, your very first champion is going to lay down and let somebody pin him. You've just completely killed any prestige that belt ever had, and it hasn't even got off the ground yet. So I really was hoping they weren't going to go in that direction, and I figured they wouldn't. But they wound up doing the spot where Brian Kendrick kind of gets injured in the match, or he's faking it. TJ Perkins is a little bit concerned for him and winds up letting his guard down. Brian Kendrick hits him with a vicious headbutt and then locks him in his captain hook or whatever the hell that finisher is, and TJ taps out. So Brian Kendrick is your new Cruiserweight champion. I'm fine with that. I think this belt should bounce around a little bit. They should be developing storylines and feuds, and that's what they're doing. I have no problem with Kendrick winning the belt. I'm actually quite happy about it. And I loved the Cruiserweight match they had on the kickoff show. The six-man match, I think it was Cedric Alexander and Sin Cara and Dorado and Gulak and Tony Nese and Daivari, I think, were on the other side. But that match was great, and the finish was great with Alexander getting the pin there at the end for his team. And I think they should open some Raws with those matches. I've mentioned that before because that was a great match to have on the kickoff show. The fans were into it. The fans really helped make that show, too, especially in the beginning. The other title match we had, of course, was the New Day defending their belts against Sheamus and Cesaro, and the New Day does survive, and their title reign continues, although they did lose the match. Kofi got involved with Sheamus on the outside of the ring and the trombone and all of that, and the referee had to call for the bell and disqualify the New Day. So Cesaro and Sheamus won, but they did not win the belts. So we're just trying to kill time here, I'm assuming, until New Day defeats Demolition's record. I don't know who's going to wind up beating them. It could be Cesaro and Sheamus. Some of you threw out the scenario to me where whatever they do with Cesaro and Sheamus, if they don't wind up winning the belts, they can't really feud again because we've already seen enough matches between those two. And we remember that Daniel Bryan kind of reached out to Cesaro all those months ago when he was being poorly used on Raw. So maybe we could wind up seeing Cesaro jump over to SmackDown, which I would love. I'm hoping that the team that beats the New Day is Gallows and Anderson. Luckily, thank God, they fucking won that match against Enzo and Cass. I mentioned in my predictions video that they better goddamn win that match. And they did, and they look like bosses doing it. If they're waiting for Finn Balor to get healthy again so they can form the Balor Club, that's fine. But don't bury these two fucking guys in the meantime. Jesus Christ. So I'm happy to see them pick up the win at Hell in the Cell tonight. And I hope they still do get a chance to hold those tag belts in the future. And the final match I will mention before I get out of here was Bayley defeating Dana Brooke. Absolutely nothing to say about that match. It was what it was. Bayley won. I'm happy about that. I'm not a big Dana Brooke fan. And, of course, we all love Bayley, even though she acts like a fucking 5-year-old. So, anyway, the pay-per-view, I got to say, was decent. I'll give it a B-, C+, somewhere in there. Definitely better than I expected. It definitely didn't suck. The matches definitely came through. As far as when I'm going to be up here this week, I don't know. Tomorrow night's Raw is Halloween. They're going to have a Halloween theme to it. Goldberg is going to be on the show, so there might be something to talk about. But for the most part, I'm not expecting this show to be crazy. So I will probably be up Wednesday or Thursday, somewhere around there, with a joint review of both shows. And I will be coming at you with a lot better audio. I'm currently in my shitty audio room right now, by the way. And I'm trying to work on fixing some of these audio issues, and one of the things I've done is purchased a Blue Yeti microphone, which is kind of like the top-of-the-line microphone for YouTube and things like that. It's not a $5,000 professional piece of equipment or anything like that, but as far as like YouTube and podcasts and shit like this goes, it's really, really high-end. So I'm looking forward to getting some of those issues worked out as well, so the audio is just a little bit more consistent. So thank you so much for listening. I will catch you in just a couple of days. Leave me all your thoughts on Hell in the Cell, what you liked and disliked about it, and where you see them going from here leading up to Survivor Series. So I'll catch you in just a few days. Until then, peace.